welcome to today's episode of The Square. We are really excited to be on location in what is, I hope, the first of many Square episodes that are out of the studio. I'm joined by Melinda Gardner, who's the principal here at Walnut Springs Elementary. We're just a stone's throw from Austin and Dripping Springs. And Erin Ortwein, who is an education architect in the Austin office. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
This is really exciting. We're going to have to do some behind the scenes photos because nobody will appreciate all the setup that went into this.
Never.
So we're in the middle of September when we're filming this, and hopefully this will air really soon. And we're basically in back to school season. And when I took my son and dropped him off at school, a lot of what I think people in general, and particularly parents, think about when you think about school is a place where their kids go, a place that is in service of children. But I think what a lot of people don't realize is it's also a very highly specialized workplace for school staff and for teachers. So I want to kind of dive into some of the intricacies of that. Before we do, I'd love to get a little bit of why education, Melinda. What fulfills you in this career?
So education is one of those things that it's just been something I've loved since I was little. Down the road at Patton Elementary, I had some teachers that really kind of sparked that passion for me. And it's just been something I've always been drawn to. There were kind of some top 5 things in life that I wanted to do, and everything always came back to education. I think the root of it is people. I love being around people, and then especially our little people, so our kids that we get to serve. But I love to just be working with others, being in collaboration, being of service to others. And just getting to see all the moments when you really step back and reflect on what we do day in and day out, because you can get caught up in the managerial side of things. But when we're out in the building and we're in the classrooms and we're interacting with kiddos, and we have so many moments, whether it's helping them through a challenge, helping them through a behavioral situation, helping them with things going on with peers, whether it's academics, just all the moments we have, there's, almost every day, especially when we're out in the classrooms, that we have those moments of, this is why we do what we do, and getting to help families. I spend a lot of time working with families that, maybe things that are happening at home or bleeding over into the school, and being able to work with families on how to try to have those solutions for them to make sure that their kiddos are being successful here. But ultimately, day in and day out, we get to be a part of children's journey and foundation and growth and development. And so what could be more exciting and fulfilling than that?
Was there a particular teacher growing up that kind of stands out for you as an example of somebody you wanted to be? Or
I have several, and I think my first very favorite teacher was my first grade teacher, Mrs. Gustafson. And I always just think back to her class, and she gave me just a love of learning, and I wanted to be like her. And then there was Miss Jones, and there was Miss Cutler, and Miss Elder, and so yeah.
Was the transition from teacher to principal something that you thought you would do eventually, or?
So it's kind of interesting because I've actually wanted to do that since I was in high school. So
really?
It was, and what I actually wanted to be was a high school AP. It was just that role whenever I was in high school, and getting to see what an AP's role was, because they were so involved with kids, and at a high school age, just such a pivotal moment in kids' lives, and getting to be a part of that and helping them to be on a particular path. So I always thought that I was going to be a secondary assistant principal. And just as time went on, I found my niche in elementary and fell in love with it. And so this is where I've stayed.
So Erin, let's talk a little bit about you. There's a lot of different types of architecture that you can kind of go into. Why education for you?
For me, it started when I was a kid as well. In 6th grade or so, someone said, oh, you could be an architect when you grow up, because I was interested in math, I was interested in art, and I kind of hung on to that little nugget. But it wasn't until high school when I really decided, okay, this is what I want to do, because I looked around at my school, which was very safe, it was clean, it was a really solid place to learn, but I felt like I could do better. I felt like there were things that were missing as a student going there that I could maybe help for that next generation, for those other students going through that pivotal time that Melinda mentioned, and just everybody remembers their high school experience. So that was what led me to really want to jump into education architecture specifically. And then you go through school and you learn about the profession and you actually dig in. You realize you get to work with people, and that part is really satisfying. I love just the collaboration it takes to bring a project to life, from conception to design to, getting all the details to work, and then you actually get to walk through at the end of the day, and it's so rewarding, and working with all the people that we get to work with is fabulous.
I would imagine on a smaller scale, getting to walk through a project that you've seen all the way through is kind of like having a student come back to you after they've gone to high school and graduated, and just kind of see it all grown up is really cool. So let's talk a little bit about the school, because as I said before, while it's not necessarily the first thing people think about, it's an extremely specialized work environment for a really critical group of people in our teachers. So let's talk a little bit about the school. As we said before, it's a very highly specialized workplace environment for a critical group of people being our teachers. What is the thought, the process that goes in, especially after the last 18 months that we've had, in terms of creating a workplace that is fulfilling and engaging, and some place that teachers can effectively and want to come work?
Absolutely. I think there's a few key things that we've learned as time has evolved with design and education, specific design, and that's flexibility is huge. We know, some of the ways that teachers teach now, but we don't know how teachers are going to teach in 5, 10, 15 years. So knowing that those unknowns exist, we want to try and plan for them, provide for them. We also know that teachers have a huge range of styles in how they teach and how they serve their students. That might change month to month with curriculum, that might change year to year with the type of students that they have in their class. So giving them that flexibility in their classroom so they can really make it their own, bring their whole self to that experience every day, is really something that we try and focus on.
So Melinda, being on the front line and being a part of all those meetings and seeing this campus kind of come to life, what are some of the things that really stand out for you?
And one of the things I'm going to piggyback on what Erin said, because flexibility is so key, and one of the things you didn't mention was how outdoor space plays into that flexibility. So there's so many opportunities that teachers, especially I think at the elementary level, can do outdoors. So part of that flexibility for us was being able to take our learning outdoors and being able to create the spaces for that. So here at our new Walnut, we have a lot of really fantastic outdoor spaces that allows for even more flexibility in that manner. In addition to flexibility, some really critical things for our teachers and staff was large classroom sizes. So of course that's really important. Again, that allows for the indoor flexibility that we need. A really neat design that we have here that we didn't even realize in the moment till teachers got in the room is there's really not a front to the classroom. So you can rearrange things the way we have our mobile boards this year, such as the one back here behind us, instead of having our monitors that are or projectors, from the ceiling. That allows so much more flexibility. And so teachers, can have a group of kids facing one way and it works just fine. They can move their room the other way. But so that big open classroom space, the way the classrooms are built around a pod ended up being really important for them too. A lot of traditional classrooms are just one really long hallway. And so if you've got 7 teachers on a team, the distance between teacher 1 and teacher 7 in that hallway, if you think about it, they are really spread out. And so not getting to have that interaction with each other quite as much. So then when you bring them around a more pod-like space, they're able to interact with each other all throughout the day. In addition, that pod, having that collaboration space, they're able to use it. So teachers go out and use that during their planning time. But that's been really neat to see, especially in our older grade levels. There's kids constantly flowing in and out of classrooms and working together in those collaboration spaces, and not just being in these, desks and rows in classrooms, which fosters a whole different type of learning.
Have you, in terms, obviously when the teachers are more satisfied and happier and effective at what they do, I think that can't help but go to the children.
Right.
Have you heard things from the kids about, different pieces, aside from just being a new building, because everybody likes something new, is there elements of the design that they really connect with?
Yeah, and getting to see, that was one of the neatest moments. So, you know, kind of seeing the whole thing come to fruition, and the first time getting to see kids come and just the awe and their eyes and kind of the wonderment. The colors have a big play. The natural lighting has a big play. The wider hallways, again, the collaboration spaces, the types of furniture. There's just a lot of really fun, neat seating that we have, and flexible seating. And so some part of our vision here for the school was being able to have a children's museum-like feel for kids, and kind of this whimsical feel. And that's exactly what the kids have been saying as they come in. So it naturally just sparks this wonderment and inquiry for them. And so that's been really important for us.
So I want to talk a little bit more about the outdoor spaces, because one of my favorite things about coming to Austin, aside from the tacos, is
barbecue.
And the barbecue,
of course,
is just being able to be outside. Like, I love the hills and the topography, and it's a great place to be outside. How does that play into some of the outdoor spaces you brought in for the campus?
Yeah, and I think that was in addition to our vision of that children museum-like feel, was taking the indoors out, bringing the outdoors in. And so with some of the learning spaces and covered patios that we've talked about, but play in general, just play, not even just the learning spaces for outside, but play is such a huge role in the development of kids. There's so many just social skills, problem solving. There's just a lot of brain development that occurs through play outside. Erin and I had lots of conversations about that. And then in addition, just the flow of the space outside, from having, the grassy knoll areas, the multiple playgrounds, having our turf spaces in between. And so besides that play for kids and being so critical, we do, schools are a community hub. And so being able to have that flow for community events, and when we have, our big family events, which we had one for our back to school bash, and that was incredible to be able to see just the way we had that all set up, and it allowed for everybody to be out there. We were able to have a DJ set up. There were kids playing in the playground, room to bring in the bounce house. We had the Kona ice truck on the back. There were people basically picnicking out on the ground. And so that was really important too. Another really neat outdoor space that we were able to have was what I called an outdoor motor lab pad. And so that was, many schools have a motor lab pad that kids are able to access, but we wanted one, again, taking things outdoors.
Yeah.
And so we have this beautiful turfed area that's got equipment that's out there to meet their sensory needs. And so that's another really neat opportunity.
I love that idea of community. I mean, so many times you think of a school as where you just drop your kids off and they learn, but you're really bringing a lot of that community aspect in. Was community part of the design and how this process happened?
Yeah, we definitely had conversations about when we have events, how will that occur here, and how can we proactively design spaces that allow for that more natural flow. So our campus has a Walnut Palooza every year. That's our big PTA fundraiser. That's awesome. So this is so ideal, the way we have the outdoor spaces set up to be able to bring everybody together.
Was that part of what you wanted to, you were talking about when you were growing up and wishing that maybe you could have spoken into the ear of the architects that designed your high school. Is that part of the process?
Absolutely. Schools really are communities, and they're reflected in the space that they exist. So in this school, it was wonderful to get to have so much community involvement from the staff and teacher level, who were incredibly generous with their time. We had existing teachers we could actually ask for feedback, get that one-on-one. What makes a space work for you? What are you excited about? With the opportunity to have a new school and a new design, how would you work with your peers, and how would you work with your students? And what can we do with the design to enable that further? But bigger than that, we actually had multiple community input sessions from parents, whether it was a survey that was sent out, from community events in the evenings and the mornings, making sure that we got all aspects of that input so that we could incorporate Walnut Springs to make sure it fit the Walnut Springs family.
I think whenever, part of that process and that design process is looking through multiple lenses. And so that was neat to be able to do. So of course, looking through the lens and the eyes of a kiddo and what is it that they would want and what is it that would make school so fun and inviting and a place that they just want to come back every day. Of course, looking through the lens of teachers and staff and just the functionality. And again, what kind of environment and work environment is it physically for them to be in? And then of course that lens from community and what can we do to make sure that this is an inviting space that allows for community opportunities.
So we've talked a lot about the building and the impact it has on the students and the teachers, but can it also have an impact in the retention of those teachers? Because I know, it has been a unique and rough last 18 months. There was a New York Times article that said disruptions to education during the pandemic are turning people away from a profession that was already struggling to attract new recruits. How can design have an effect or potentially promote both retention and recruiting new blood for the teachers?
Well, it's interesting because there is a lot of research behind students and what the building looks like and the impact that has on students and their success. Of course, it does in workplaces too. And so I know Erin's heard this before that yes, it was a really tough years. It's turning into years, right? And so it was really nice the first time that we brought some of our staff over here at the end of a very exhausting long school year and feeling excited about the upcoming school year because of the school and the place that they were going to get to work in. So getting to come in, seeing this space, for example, our collaboration corner where teachers get to come in and meet and do professional development, but just the feel of this, it's this warm kind of like you're in your living room getting to do learning. And so it plays a big role in coming in and feeling good and having pride in the place that you're working in, but that it also is meeting your needs to be able to do your job.
Are there elements that you think about, Erin, when you're designing that are specifically targeted towards helping campus leadership with retention and satisfaction and even recruiting of new teachers?
Absolutely, and I think it comes back to some of those things we touched on earlier, that flexibility in the classroom and natural light, bringing the outdoors in. We know that teachers spend an amazing amount of time and effort day-to-day teaching, but also all the after-hour time it takes to get ready for those lessons. And if they're going to spend it here at school, we want them to be as comfortable as possible. So giving them spaces where they can have that professional development, they can have some heads down time, and they can really make the school their own so that they feel like, okay, I do want to get up and go there every day. And bringing those in really is a goal that we have every time.
Similar, I would imagine, to the collaboration corner. It's not just a place to, eat your lunch and get a coffee. You've got all this technology. You've got, comfortable couches, things that really kind of make it something that can be relaxing for them.
Absolutely. Bringing the technology in so that you can reconfigure to suit your needs, whether you're doing a small training one-on-one or a full staff training, having those places where you can go in the campus that support those different needs, that scalability is really important and part of that flexibility.
So flexibility kept coming to mind again. It's just each of these spaces have so much flexibility. So even our lounge, which is so fun to get to walk by, very different from the lounge that we had before. And every day it's filled with teachers that are in there that really just kind of in fellowship with each other, right? They are able to talk some work stuff, but it just creates an environment where they can talk on personal levels and feel comfortable. But then also it's got, because it does have a whiteboard in there and the way the tables are, you could easily conduct interviews or have a meeting or have a training in that lounge and with the counter right behind you with the coffee and all the things that you need to make it more pleasurable.
To make it through the day. And I can even in the background hear some of the teachers in the lounge next door. I'm curious, how do you balance that flexibility between things? You don't want everything in a room to be on rollers because then it feels a little bit transient, but you do want to balance that flexibility of having things that can move around and adjust versus some permanent anchors in the design. How do you balance that?
A lot of it is thinking through, what could you do differently? So we have multiple places where people can plug in technology. We have multiple places that can be the front of the room, like Melinda mentioned earlier, so that if you think, okay, for this setting, I want to look that way, and I have this configuration versus, oh, we're going to do a little bit differently next time because we're talking about something else, or we have a different level of focus, and you can turn your attention to a different direction. So thinking about those items when we build out the space, when we work through the design and what actually goes in the wall and on the wall and in all those places, all of those things are in the forethought of our mind when we're laying out a space.
And I think important for that too is just kids and teachers both spend so much time here, and so being able to shift things around so you keep it fresh and new, and it feels fresh and new whenever you can move things around and adjust. And so I think that was always at the forefront too.
Well, to that end, are there things, when you think about the future and how a campus will need to evolve, what are some of the specific things you're putting into the design to allow for that evolution?
I think some of it is thinking about, you've got, especially on an elementary campus, you've got different needs for different age groups. You've got your pre-K kiddos who have a very different experience day to day than your fifth grade students. Yeah. And the way you teach those students is also very different from what I understand. So when we looked at those pod designs, we also took that into consideration, getting feedback from Melinda and her leadership team, getting feedback from the teachers. How does this space support this type of learning for this age group? And making sure that those parts and pieces fit as we went up in grade level, and as we looked at bringing the outside in and looking at not only small groups, but medium-sized groups and large groups, and how all of that interaction could play out into the layout of a school.
All right, I'm going to put you on the spot, Melinda. Is there anything you would do differently having 2020 looking back over this process?
It's a great question. I don't know if we've had quite enough time in here yet to figure that out. And part of, what I've said to people is I've wanted to get the kiddos in here because the kids are going to really teach us how to use this space. They're going to think of things that we haven't thought of. And so, we're only, I think, 3.5 weeks in, if I'm not mistaken. Time flies when you're having fun, right? And so I think we need a little bit more time to really be able to see, what would we do differently. I know, of course, there's some little things here and there, the acoustics, and so in our big spacious hallways and having the concrete floors, of course, is one, but we're working around those as well, and working to see how we can reduce some of the noise in those spaces. But really, it's going to come down to spending more time, especially the kids teaching us how to use the spaces. And I think with the teachers too, kind of that same thing over time. They're going to think of some things, but really the kiddos are the root of it, and they're going to let us know the really great ways to use it.
That's a great cycle, considering they're teaching you how to use the space, and the teachers are educating
They're
them.
so imaginative, and just the ideas that they come up with, and they're problem solvers too. And so they'll really come up with some great ideas for what we need to do.
What was opening day like for you, watching them get to experience the space for the first time?
Yeah, that was really fantastic. Just again, so much excitement and the wows, and I can't wait to come to school. So when it was our meet the teacher night, and then a few days until school started, and them just being so excited to be here and come. And I think, of course, people were worried about, the size of it, and that it was going to be too small. And it was like, oh my gosh, it's so spacious and so big. But every corner kids turned on that day, and families turned. Hearing what families were saying as they were leaving was really nice to hear too. And then again, the ultimate for me was that the back to school bash component that evening that was all outside. I went upstairs, and there's views everywhere in the hill country. One of our teachers has called this that we have a farmhouse schoolhouse. So all of our views, you can see the whole country, but getting to look out and just see, like I said before, the community spread outside of the building, it was, and just getting to see that whole cycle, it'd been a long journey. And then seeing, there's some anticipation and some nervousness in that anticipation of, oh my goodness, I hope this is what they hoped for too. And so, and hearing the continued, what I decide 3.5 weeks that we might be in, but that continued excitement of kids, and hearing parents telling us that their, students when they come home are like, I can't wait to go back. So
that's awesome. one of the things that I think is also sometimes taken for granted is the amount of technology that goes into a school and creating the agility that complements the flexibility of a space. What is that like to try and design around that?
We try to put ourselves in the shoes of a teacher or of a student for that day and say, how would we go about this activity? So let's say you're having a small group activity and you need to use your teaching tool, which in this case was mobile flat panels, in one corner of the room. And then maybe you're going to co-teach and work with your peer across the way. And so you pull all those kids out into the pod. You need flexibility and technology to support that activity. So there's a number of tools that we use to make sure that we build in the flexibility and the agility for teachers to use those components to build on their lessons. Things like Wi-Fi, having multiple drops everywhere, just thinking of every space as a multimodal space so that there is no front of the room, there is no, this is the only place you can do this. Everything is on the table. Everywhere is a teaching and learning tool.
You're literally keeping from working them into a corner.
Pretty much.
Is there, when you think about how kids learn, and so much of it is going into maker spaces and being able to be outside and have that hands-on teaching, how important is that for the students? Especially thinking about how to prepare them for the future.
So those, especially like the makerspace, they are so excited to get to go there. It's just fun and imaginative and getting to create, but they're also problem solving while they get to do it. And so that's a really fun space that our kids look forward to going to that. And then we also have our little recording studio where we do our Tiger News Flash, our TNF. So our
That's
fourth and
awesome.
fifth graders really look forward to that. And they love the design of that new studio this year. We even have, with it having the clear windows all the way around, kids kind of pretend like they're on the Today Show. And so sometimes we have them with little walnut and tiger signs and dripping spring
awesome.
signs in the background. But they do their own little broadcast and run the camera. And so that's been neat for them because at our previous campus, that was in the makerspace. And so they have their own little studio that just, it feels like they're really doing the job.
That's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about the future and what's next. Erin, we'll start with you. I know you have somebody you're going to be taking care of for a few months, but then after that, what's the next project or opportunity for you?
It's a really fun thing about this job is being an education architect. You always get to look forward to that next cool project, that next way that you're impacting the community. You're building classrooms and schools and teaching spaces and specialized work environments for all of these wonderful people. And I'm excited about that next school.
That's awesome. Melinda, obviously you need to get to the end of the school year, but what do you think is next for Walnut Springs?
I think for us, really, and it sounds simple, but really just settling in. You think about when you move into a new home, it takes a little bit of time. You might start with things in one place, and then you realize that, that doesn't feel quite right. And so I think it's really about settling in for us and really figuring out exactly what is most comfortable here. And then, again, boils down to the different ways that, like I said before, that our students will show us how to use this space and getting to watch them flourish here.
Well, I'm excited for both of you. Thank you so much for inviting us in and letting us do this Square episode here. I'm going to go grab some Austin barbecue for lunch. Thank you so much for watching and joining us. Make sure that you check out in the description below for more about some of the research that has been talked about, as well as more Square episodes.